Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, friends. I am excited today to do a little improv, right? Just move and shake however things go. And wouldn't life be a lot easier if we just kind of took it as it came and said, yes, and? Well, we've got the professional on our show today. Avish Parashar is here with us, and he's a fellow Philadelphian CSP, also from the National Speakers Association, and we're here together in Philadelphia. And I just want to introduce, he grew up in, exotic Poughkeepsie, New York, and makes his home today Philadelphia, as I said. Though he performed all through high school, he decided to stop performing when he went to college to focus on his studies. And of course, his parents were very happy about his decision. And that resolve lasted only a few months, apparently, because the first time that he saw improv comedy, that was it. He fell in love. And okay, maybe his parents were a little bit less proud, but 1 week later, he auditioned for the campus improv group. And without saying too much more, basically, it's his thing. He is the king of improv. I've actually seen him. We did an event together a couple of years ago at Texas A&M, and I saw him do this amazing thing live where he just totally improv'd from all the cards that everyone had given him on all the tables. So he is an absolute master. He weaves together hysterical and humorous stories, jokes, audience interactions, and improv comedy games. And as I said, it's really impressive. He keeps his audience engaged while imparting also a key lesson, right? So that's important. He's not just going and giving you some ha-has. He's actually giving you much deeper lessons that can be applied also in business. No matter how you use it, whether it's in your personal life or in business, this framework of yes and is extremely powerful. So without further ado, Avish, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Penny. I'm very excited to be here chatting with you today.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there's so much interlocking that goes along with the reset mindset and yes and, because the reset mindset is meant to be a foundational and dynamic reassessment. And I see that's the yes and framework is being dynamic, right, in nature and constantly moving with what's coming. What do you see as the potential connection between those two concepts?
Well, I think a lot of, if I'm remembering correctly, because you were on my podcast and you talked all about the reset mindset, and so I learned a lot more about it there. If I recall correctly, a lot of it is about pausing and then reframing, not quite pausing, but kind of taking a breath, and then reframing, which in a lot of ways is what yes and is, because the opposite of yes and is yes but. And that is very much a negative mindset, well, yeah, everything's going crazy, but I just got to push through. Whereas the yes and is more about accepting and then saying, all right, this change happened, this unexpected setback, things didn't go as I planned, and here's what I'm going to do about it. So it's almost like a little language tool that can help people reset before they kind of start then going into, your wonderful framework.
Exactly. Well, it is part of the framework, right? Because it's a reset practice. Like you said, it's the language, and it helps us to focus, like you said, not on resisting and being focused on what's wrong and what we don't want, but moving it forward in forward motion. Mm-hmm. So yeah, before we come back to that, you talked about in your bio there that, you fell in love in college and that was it. What was it about improv? What is it about improv that lights you up and that you love?
Well, I've thought about this a lot, and if I could roll it back, I said the first time I saw improv, I fell in love, which is true. The first time I heard about improv, though, my immediate response was to say, yes, but. Because one of my college buddies told me I should try out for improv. He thought it was funny. And I had never done improv. I had never even seen it. I was immediately like, no, that's not for me. And it took him nagging me for like 3 or 4 months before I finally even went and just saw a show. And at the time, I would tell you what I liked. It was just, it looked like a ton of fun and was hilarious. And when you're in college, I had time. That's all you need. Why I'm still doing it now, 30 years later, instead of, getting a real job, I guess it's a few things. One is it is the deep access of creativity, which I think that when we access our creativity, that is what lets us feel engaged and alive. And when you do improv, as opposed to like scripted theater, where there's obviously creativity there, but the improv, you are creating every moment, which is great. And the second thing is the what I call the opportunities for brilliance, because you never know what's going to happen, which a lot of people look at as something to be afraid of. Like, I improv, I don't know. For me, I love it because it just means every moment has that possibility for something brilliant to happen. Now, it doesn't always happen, but just knowing it's there, and then when it does, it just, you connect with the audience, you say something unexpected that surprises you, and it takes everything in a new direction. And just the opportunity for those moments, I think, is why I still really love doing it.
Well, when something great happens out of the unexpected, I think there are, even plans that it was something you didn't plan, and all of a sudden it was an impromptu dinner, and that turns out to be like the best night of, the month, sometimes just because it was unexpected, right? So I think there's also that.
Well, right, and so much of that can be fabricated, both with yes and the reset mindset, right? Because when like an unexpected plan comes up, or you were going to go out and meet some friends and they canceled, you have that choice, right? And it's like you can just be like, I'm just going to stay home and rearrange my drawer, which sometimes that is very satisfying. Or you can say, oh wow, now I got a free evening, I can reset and I can go and yes and this and do something, and maybe that thing you end up doing is even better than the original plan was going to be. But so many people just default to the, oh, woe is me, my plan fell through, I'll just be sad.
Exactly. I want to point out, you mentioned, sparking the creativity aspect of it. And I think it's important that, when people think, I used to think I'm not creative. My brothers were musical and one of them was artistic, and I just didn't have that. And it only came years later when I realized that creativity comes in all shapes and forms, right? You don't have to be funny necessarily, right, to be good and enjoy improv. And so I think it's important. Maybe we can just speak to the creativity aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah. So two things about that. One is that I honestly believe that everyone has an inner creative genius. And we start out as kids. You've got, you don't need toys. Kids are just creating. They're playing with action figures or building things with their imagination. It's just that society tends to beat the creativity out of us as we grow up, because the more you enter the world, the more the message is constantly reinforced that you have to watch what you say and kind of color in the lines. And so a lot of when I do work on creativity with people, it's this free form practice. All I really do, I play this improv game, and I do it, and then I'll have the audience do it if it's a workshop, called the expert interview, where I just pretend to be an expert on some topic that I know nothing about. I have the audience ask me a question, and then I just answer. And the only trick to that game is this little improv technique I call open your mouth and start talking. Because what most people do is they will think, oh, what's a funny way? And it's never funny. But when you just start blurting, and when the audience does it, when I tell them they're going to do it, they get nervous. And then when the exercise is done, they're almost all like, wow, I did way better at that. And which ties to the second thing about this is, in 30 years of performing, and a lot of those were teaching improv, I've never taught anyone how to be funny. All I ever taught them to do is essentially how to bypass that filter we develop and let their creativity flow. And then the natural humor and creativity just happens on its own.
I played that game, actually. I took an improv class with some friends, and it's super fun, right? And I did it just because I want to practice being more spontaneous and not worry about what I say and that type of thing. And
anyone can do it. It's just answer the question. Just make up an answer. And people are like, what if I don't know what to say? I'm like, just open your mouth and see what comes out, because something will come out.
It certainly will.
Well, that's, I think, the other hesitation is people are worried. Like, well, if I don't think through my words carefully, like, what if I say something dumb or stupid? I'm like, well, in improv, that's kind of the point, which is why I think using improv as a tool to train these things is so freeing for people, because it's almost like the point is to be ridiculous versus other creativity exercises where maybe you're trying to come up with a good answer.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? It brought me up a thought. Something that I've even been feeling lately is because AI is there and is supporting people in how they write their letters. And right, it's now all of the communication is focused on being perfect, is getting exactly the right language. And I kind of feel like I'm fighting with that in my head a little bit. I don't want the pressure of feeling like everything that I say has to be perfect all the time. Like, yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like there's more pressure for that. Do you feel that way? Like, do you see that there's something changing in that, in this aspect of just kind of go with it can help us to get out of it?
Yeah, and I think it's been for a long time the perfectionism and never letting our guard down. And I think that's being accelerated and amplified by AI and other
That's
tools
what I mean.
and everything being so polished or I mean, I wouldn't say as polished, but everything's got kind of a format. And yeah, I think authenticity is kind of the thing that's going to separate people as AI takes over a lot of things. People who really are just making authentic creativity, authentic connection, but you can't get to that without being a little messy, because it's not just like, oh, here's who
Yeah.
I am. I mean, I'm 52 years old. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I still struggle with exactly answering that question. And it's through the messiness that the sort of brilliance comes out.
And maybe this yes and right, if we play these games, maybe we can just step into that a little bit more so that we can, as you said, if it's amplifying the feeling of perfectionism, I could see that being something to really help people just to be okay being a little messy.
Well, yeah, because with improv, it's two things. One is that you're going to be messy, right? You're just making it up and it's disposable theater. It's not like you do it over and over again. You do it once. If it stunk, all right. The second thing, the lesson that's really powerful that I love is the mistakes often lead to the best improvisations. For example, I did this 2-man podcast for a long time with my best friend, a fellow improviser. And where we would basically make up a movie in a specific genre, and we kind of improvise this whole movie playing improv games. And we were doing a Christmas one, and with the main character's name was Holly because it's like Christmas. And he accidentally in one scene had another character call that character Noel. And what you would normally do in that situation is be like, oh, let's correct it and move on. Instead, we used that mistake and it created this entire storyline about how the main character's ex-girlfriend was named Noelle and she passed away and he was trying to recover. None of that was in the original plan, but just by taking that mistake and not fix it and move on, but how can we use this? Like you learn that in improv, that those little errors are actually like the blossoming points of amazing creativity.
Mm. And I think that's true probably in business too, as you're ideating and you bring out maybe what might be a stupid idea that could, and because no idea is stupid in that way because it sparks other people's ideas, right? And so I think that is true, that can cross different categories, right? It's not just for improv, it crosses over into different areas of our life.
Yeah, and in improv, we have this thing called an offer, which is it's sort of a generic term, but anything I say or do in the scene is an offer because essentially I'm offering it to the other players and to the scene. And if we think in that terms, when it comes to like ideation, brainstorming, creativity, problem solving, if you don't think in terms of here's my solution, but rather here's my offer, like you said, it then becomes, all right, that was a terrible idea, but that triggers this new idea in my mind, which kind of going back to and this just happened to me today, going back to your AI conversation, that's where one of my best uses of AI comes from, not from me giving it a question and give me this brilliant answer. But today I asked it a question about helping me format this book I'm working on. And it gave me this answer that I'm like, well, that won't work at all for me. But something about the answer it gave me is what triggered the next little ripple in my mind. And then all of a sudden I wrote 500 words that got me past my block.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of blocks, right? Getting stuck, overwhelmed, being in a conflict, how can yes and as a framework, right? And a language, how can that help us in those types of situations?
In a conflict, like interpersonal type conflict or disagreement? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So our natural response when we are arguing or disagreeing is to say, yes, but. And that is like, yeah, but let me show you my point of view. And all yes and does is reverse that. So instead of me saying, yes, but let me point out what I'm saying, it's yes, and let me understand you more. So and this kind of comes back to the Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And yes, and is a simple way of remembering that. Anytime you're saying a but, you are enhancing the argument. And anytime you're going to say an and, you're going to be seeking to understand and empathize more. So what that does is, number one, it reduces the stress and tension because instead of me arguing, I'm lowering the tension. And number two, the deeper I understand you and your point of view, I might figure out that, A, we don't actually have a conflict, or I might find the common ground, or at least, if nothing else, what it does is I shut up. I just let you talk. And I don't interrupt you. I don't say, yeah, but, and when you are done, then I can summarize and say, okay, here's what you said. And here's why I disagree, it completely changes the energy of a conversation.
Somebody feels hurt, right? And that right there, like you said, just changes the dynamic and reduces the intensity on both sides.
Yeah, and I had a friend who used this technique. In fact, I think he used it with his kid. But the word "but" is so charged that he said he just reset how he talked to his daughter. Exact same phrase, just replacing the "but" with an "and." Like, oh yeah, I know you want to go out with your friends tonight, but you can't because it's school night. Versus, oh, I know you want to go with your friends tonight and you can't because it's a school night. It's just exact same words, but just the "and" instead of the "but" completely changes the energy of the conversation.
It totally does. It totally does. I mean, think about it, for people who are listening, if once somebody says "but," you shut down because you're waiting for them. They're not listening is what it tells you. They were just waiting to speak so that they could take the opposite side or negate it.
But negates everything that came before it, right?
Right.
It's like, oh,
right.
You're wonderful. You're a great employee. You do such a great job. But like, oh, I don't care what you just said positively about me.
Totally. But I just said that.
You said it's a natural word to say.
I know. And then we hear ourselves. So how many times, though, does that happen when people are good intention and they're speaking and they're giving a few good things before they go into like the developmental piece and that word slips in there that just, like you said, that changes the whole dynamic and the whole conversation where people don't feel like you actually meant those first things that you said that were positive about them.
Yeah, and if you want, if your listeners want for like a leadership technique, I was speaking at an event. I was doing a training workshop, and they had like kind of the big boss come in early before me and gave some advice and some wisdom, some experience. And he talked about we've all heard the criticism sandwich, right? Which is like say something positive. And he talked about that was really great and how it was very helpful. And he left. And then when I got to this yes and section of my thing, I was talking, and I didn't say he was wrong. Obviously, that technique's been around for decades because it's useful and it works. I'm like, if you want to enhance it, though, number one, make sure the criticism follows from the positive. So instead of like something like you are so great, everyone loves you, you're a great collaborator, but you're often late, right? Instead, say, oh, you know what? Everyone loves the work you put in. You do such a great job. And I think what would help you be even more connected with the people is if you could show up on time more, right? So what you're doing is instead of positive but unrelated, it's positive and I'm connecting this to my feedback, so it sort of naturally flows and becomes more about how they can be better and not to criticize them.
It's connected to the value that was part of the first piece.
Exactly. So it's not just otherwise you feel the positive is blowing smoke and kind of preparing them for the blow.
And that's what people think, right?
Yeah. But when you connect it, it's like, oh, that's why you were complimenting me on that, and here's how I can take it to the next level.
Yeah, totally. So what are some other examples of how people could use this in their business environment? A lot of people who are listening, they're entrepreneurs, they're middle or senior managers, how can they be using this day to day in other ways that we haven't talked about yet?
Sure. So I think we talked about, obviously, you could use it for creativity, you could use it for communication. Using it for change is a big thing I'm working on and talking about now, which is kind of like a setback thing. But when change happens, as it does constantly and then more and more rapidly, the natural response is to say, yeah, but. And it's either to say, yeah, but how can we keep doing things the same way even though everything's changed? Or, yeah, but why can't we just go back to doing it the old way? This is like the two most common things I hear.
Right.
And it's very natural. And believe me, I, as an implementer, that's my default reaction too. But the problem is we can't make progress looking backwards. So when we put our head down and say, I'm just going to do things the same way, this is when the world passes us by. And this is also when we get overwhelmed because you just keep doing things the same way and the world passes you by. And eventually you have to catch up. So now you're like chasing. If instead we just catch ourselves saying that, yeah, but, and switch it to a yes, and yes, this change is happening. And here's one little step I can take, right? This doesn't have to be giant. It's not about huge steps or leaps. It's just, what's one little thing I can do in the face of this change? And just see what happens, right? This kind of comes back to creativity and getting messy. It just changes your relationship with change and allows you to actually get the forefront of it instead of constantly falling behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the number one reason why change fails to have long-term impact is basically because of resistance. It's the but. And I think it was Boston Consultant Group. I'm forgetting it right now. McKinsey or one of those.
Yeah, McKinsey on 70%.
Company that said 75% of these transformations, they fail. And it's because of that resistance. So if one knows and can use that in the organization as a leadership tool, then they're going to have a lot better chance of making that transformation and having it stick.
Yeah, and it can work either for the employees and also for the leader. So you want to get the employees out of the yes but mindset, and that's kind of training them, coach them on this yes and how do you kind of shift your language. But for leaders as well, it's amazing how leaders will often use yes but to try to roll out yes and, like, you need to say yeah but you're not doing it right. Versus, you're like, change is naturally an emotional time. It's an uncertain time. People are afraid. So when your employees are voicing their concerns, your natural tendency is going to be to yes, but it, like, yeah, but don't worry about that. Or, yeah, but this is the way it has to be. If instead we yes and their concerns, that gives them, like you said earlier, it makes them feel understood and listened. And that, without you having to come up with a logical reason why the change is going to be okay for them, that lowers their resistance just simply by listening and taking their opinions and yes-anding them and digging deeper.
Yeah, that's great, right? It's an employee tool. It's a leadership tool. Mm-hmm. And it's so simple, right?
It is. And, we tend to reject the simple. If it's too simple, it's not going to help.
Right? Give me something more complex. Give me something that...
right. Like the reset mindset also is like, it's not overly complicated. It's like 3 steps. They're all things you hear about. You're like, oh, yeah. But doing it consistently and building that practice, it just... Right. Yeah, the simple, I think, is good. Otherwise, you just kind of forget the steps. You don't do it. And
it has to be, right? It makes it accessible, especially at the difficult times when we need it most. And simple means that we'll practice it in the smaller moments so that we can have access to it in the bigger moments. So I know for me, I sometimes on stage, I take people through a skydiving experience. And I talk about, they give you 3 simple instructions when they give you this long training, right? You think it would be really complex. No, you get 3 things that they ask you to do in like this 3-minute instruction. And the point is that you can't remember more than that. And don't forget to breathe, put your arms and your legs out, and make sure your legs are up when you land so you don't break them. That's easy enough to remember. I got it. But more than that, you're going to forget.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm working on a new book. Then I'm doing this yes and framework where yes and is an acronym. But that's 6, which I think is fine because it's an acronym, so it's a realm. But I'm still in my head keeping it simple. I'm like, is 6 too long? Should I, but it works for the acronym, so I'll probably keep it. But
and you break it out into 3 and 3.
7. So what's that?
You break it out into 3 and 3 if it's 6, right?
I thought about that. Yeah, I'm like, can I make the 3? Can I make them relatable? Yeah, and it is 2 words, so it's
exactly.
Yeah, I think it'll work.
2 parts. I think you got this. I'm excited to read it when it comes out.
Oh, thank you.
So let's head into a little bit of a reset rapid fire.
Yes.
What's your favorite song to help you to reset, to shift your energy and your mood?
Well, I would say it is also one of my favorite songs. It's probably lesser known. It's a 10-minute long instrumental called La Villa Strangiato by the band Rush, which is, to me, it's kind of a virtuosic piece of music that it kind of has a slow build and it almost takes on a meditative quality. So a lot of times when I go for a walk, I'll listen to a podcast. But if I really want to like go over material or brainstorm, I have a mix on my phone, which is like 5 different versions of a song, like 1 and then 4 live versions. And I just listen. And the one reason I love Rush is they're amazing at what they do. And I always feel inspired because they're so good at playing. So it sort of gets me in this motivated, inspirational, aspirational type place.
Awesome. We'll check it out. When is the last time that you laughed until you cried?
Well, that is a great question. I'd probably say it's been a while since I laughed that hard. I laugh a lot, but laughed till I cried probably about a year ago, maybe a little less, when I was hanging with my kind of best friend from college, the one I did the podcast with. And just when we get together, we kind of hit this sort of level of stupid humor that sort of perpetuates itself. So that's a good point, though. I should probably reconnect because it's been a little while since that's happened.
Shouldn't we all? I mean, that kind of laughter, right, just is so cathartic and just brings us right into our heart and connects us with ourselves and each other. And so, yeah, it came to me today where I was thinking about it. I haven't asked that question before, but I was like, that's I haven't laughed until I cried. Also, probably 2 years. It's been a
long time. It's a great, because obviously how often you laugh, like that I could answer. That was today. But laugh till you cry is a good one.
So what is the worst advice you've ever heard and decided to let it go?
Specific to me?
Yeah.
Then I would say in my early days as a speaker, I had done improv already for about 10 years. And when I kind of got going with my speaking business, using speaking as a tool, I had not one, but 2 separate people, one of whom is a very well-known like marketing expert in our industry, tell me I should absolutely take improv off of my marketing. They said no one is going to hire you if you market on improv because no one wants their people to improvise. Everyone just wants their people to do what they say. So me being newer in the business and younger and listening to these brilliant people, I did it. And, business struggled. It didn't work well. And then finally I got to a point where I was like, oh, well, my business isn't working anyways. If I'm going to fail, I may as well fail doing what I really want to do and what I love. And so I leaned into the improv aspect. And that's when things actually started getting better because I was being more authentic, more true to myself. So people, very well-known marketing people give me good marketing advice that was totally not aligned with me and who I was. And when I let that go is when things started to work out.
Perfect. Right. And, I ask these questions because I want everybody, if you're listening, people tell you things all the time where they don't understand the context. They don't understand your genius. You need to take everything with, a grain of salt and listen. There's probably something in there that you might be able to take away, but it doesn't mean that's one person's perspective, right? And
the grain of salt thing. I do programs for other speakers. The NSA. I do some chapter programs. I say at the beginning of everyone, like, listen, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm going to tell you what works for me and works for people I've worked with, but your experience might be different. So don't take anything I say as this is the way you have to do it.
Well, especially because what you do might be authentic to you, and someone else doing that might be totally inauthentic, and then it doesn't work because it's not authentic.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell when someone is doing something because they're following a system or advice and not just doing kind of what is true to them.
Totally. All right, last question. What's one thing you wish people would say yes to more?
I wish people would say yes to the little yes but voice in their head. I think everyone has an internal persistent yes but, a little voice that keeps telling them something in their head and they keep saying yes but to it. And I think that if people would just say yes and to that, they would be happier, more fulfilled, they would take more chances, and the world would just be a better place.
Wonderful. So tell us how people can get a hold of you and either watch you do improv, hire you, get your next book, whatever it is that you're working on.
Absolutely. So the best place to go is avishparashar.com, AVISHPARASHAR.com. There's not a lot of Avishes in the world, so if you just type my first name into Google, I'll be one of the first couple results if you're driving, you didn't get a chance to write that down. You can get, I have video clips up there. I have a TEDx talk you can watch. There's lots of information about my programs. If you're interested in my books, you'll get a pop-up probably to get some free downloads and get on my list for announcements. And there's a link there to my podcast. I have my own podcast called Yes And, which Penny, you were a guest on. And at the time of this recording, it's going to be live in like the next 2 to 4 weeks. So when this comes out, I guess it'll probably be out there. So you can listen to The Roles Be Reversed, where you can hear me learning from Penny's wisdom. So avishparashar.com. And that also has links to my socials like LinkedIn and Facebook.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you, Penny. This was great.
And thank you all for being here, because couldn't we all use a little bit more improv in our life, especially today? I mean, we live in the age of change. Things are changing so quickly. And if we just had that mindset, that reset mindset to go with yes and as a regular reset practice where we go, all right, let's go. Yes. And what's next? And how do we navigate through this? It's going to just help us to be a little bit more grounded and stable, despite the fact that things are changing around us, because we're just going with the flow. So I hope you get that. And also remember, find that opportunity to laugh until you cry. It really feels good. So happy to see you all, and we'll see you in the next episode. My name is Penny Zanker, and it's Take Back Time. See ya. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.